There was a time when building a stand-up roller coaster sounded exciting and original. Now I only hear about them getting removed. The war on stand-up roller coasters came to a head back in 2015 when Cedar Point converted Mantis, their B&M stand-up, into a floorless roller coaster called Rougarou. Suddenly, everyone was clamoring for their stand-up coaster to be converted, thus signaling the end of this gimmicky coaster design. The concept first came to light in Japan back in 1982 when Togo took a couple of their looping coasters and repurposed them with standing trains. It wasn't until 1984 when we would see our first original stand-up coaster get constructed, which was King Cobra at Kings Island. In 1990, Bolliger and Mabillard constructed their first roller coaster, Iron Wolf, which was a stand-up roller coaster. B&M took this concept and began to build more elaborate and intense versions. Mantis was the first stand-up coaster to push the envelope, including 4 inversions, a height of 145 feet, and speeds up to 60 miles an hour. Chang, which is now known as Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure, was originally constructed at Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom, featured the tallest inversion in the world with a vertical loop, standing 121 feet. The ride also exceeded the number of inversions Mantis had with 1 additional inversion. The ride layout is extremely similar, only adding in another corkscrew near the end of the ride. The following year, B&M outdone themselves once more by building RIDDLER'S Revenge. This giant looping coaster is 156 feet tall, a max speed of 65 miles an hour, and has 6 inversions. The coaster wars were in full swing near the end of the 90s, so you had to outdo yourself with every new attraction. RIDDLER'S Revenge differed from the other 2 stand-up coasters, and its layout mimics closer to the traditional B&M loopers like Kumba, Dragon Kong, and Bizarro. The final original stand-up coaster to be constructed is Georgia Scorcher, opening in 1999 at Six Flags Over Georgia. Instead of going larger, Six Flags took a more reserved approach with Georgia Scorcher, as this stand-up coaster only features 2 inversions and a height of 107 feet. Since then, the concept has gone cold. All stand-up Togo models in the US have been destroyed, with both Iron Wolf and Chang being shuffled into different parks. We weren't seeing any new projects, but only hearing about the possibility of removing them. By now, the concept of a stand-up coaster wasn't exciting anymore, plus many were starting to discover how uncomfortable this style of coaster can be. The infamous B&M rattle can be exaggerated on a stand-up coaster since the center of gravity is higher off the tracks than your typical sit-down coaster. The ride popularity of these models were starting to dwindle, becoming some of the least ridden attractions at the respective parks. As mentioned earlier, Cedar Fair converted Mantis into a floorless roller coaster in attempts to revive their dying coaster. The new floorless trains seem to improve the ride, providing you with a slightly smoother and more comfortable experience. It didn't take much time for 2 other stand-up coasters to get the same treatment. Vortex at California's Great America was transformed into Patriot, and Apocalypse at Six Flags America was converted into Firebird. From what I hear, Patriot and Firebird are better versions of their predecessors, but not huge improvements. I'm not convinced that Vortex, located at Carowinds, will be converted into a floorless coaster. I think the investment is not worth the return. Personally, I would assume they would remove this coaster before converting it. This concept made sense for California's Great America and Six Flags America. Both are smaller parks, so any improvement is easily marketed as a new roller coaster. So I just don't think the same concept will work with Vortex at Carowinds. As for Rougarou, well, it was the test run to see if this concept would work. If Vortex gets removed, as I suspect will happen within a few years, that only leaves us with Green Lantern, RIDDLER'S Revenge, and Georgia Scorcher. I think these remaining stand-up roller coasters in the United States will stay in operation for as long as they can. Six Flags Magic Mountain and Six Flags Great Adventure have floorless coasters in operation, so there'd be no point in converting those 2. As for Georgia Scorcher, according to coaster enthusiasts, it's the best stand-up coaster in operation. Because the ride is smaller, the G-forces are not as intense, allowing for a better ride experience. The primary complaint about stand-up coasters is comfort. If you have the seat incorrectly placed, your ride experience will be very poor. Roller coasters like Green Lantern and Riddler's Revenge deliver some strong G-forces, so if your seat isn't placed correctly, your bad experience is even more exaggerated. Georgia's Scorcher can get away with a little more because it's not as super intense. If there's any future with stand-up coasters, it's going to be with smaller designs. Earlier this year, B&M trademarked a new coaster model called Surf Coaster. We have no information on this model, so we can only make an educated guess. The mainstream rumor is that this model will be a modern take on the stand-up coaster. We would assume that the rider would be positioned in a surfer position, so you would be situated sideways. Again, this is just speculation. It's possible that this concept may never see the light of day. So, is a stand-up coaster a dying breed? Have we come to the end of this coaster model? I think our answer is rather obvious. The last built was Georgia Scorcher in 1999, and we've only seen these models get torn down or repurposed into floorless coasters. The concept of standing up while riding a roller coaster adds very little to the whole experience. And why spend $20 million on a new stand-up coaster when you can get a more popular and re-rideable attraction like an invert, floorless, or wing models? Alright, well thank you for watching today's video. Let me know what you think. Are stand-up roller coasters approaching their extinction? Let me know in the comments below. As always, please subscribe so you don't miss out on more great content coming your way by XscreamThrills.